What do you do when your company, once famous for building deadly fighter planes, is suddenly banned from making anything that flies? If you were Messerschmitt, you built one of the strangest cars the world had ever seen. After World War II, Germany was in ruins. Cities were bombed out, factories were gutted, and the economy was in freefall. With strict Allied restrictions in place, Messerschmitt, a name once feared in the skies for its warplanes, was prohibited from producing aircraft. The company needed a lifeline, and in one of the most bizarre pivots in automotive history, they turned their engineering expertise towards something no one expected: a tiny, three-wheeled bubble car barely big enough for two people. But this wasn't just some desperate gimmick. What they built would become a postwar icon. The mastermind behind this bizarre machine wasn't a car designer at all. His name was Fritz Fendt, a former aircraft engineer with a vision born from tragedy. After the war, Germany wasn't just rebuilding buildings, it was rebuilding lives. Thousands of wounded veterans returned home with no way to move around. Public transport was unreliable. Cars were unaffordable. So Fendt built something radically simple: a lightweight motorized tricycle that could be operated by hand, giving amputees and disabled soldiers their freedom back. But soon, something unexpected happened. Healthy civilians started asking for them too. Fendt realized this wasn't just a medical device. This could be a revolutionary commuter vehicle. And that's when Messerschmitt stepped in. What began as a tool for wounded veterans was about to become one of Europe's most unusual cars. The result of this wild collaboration was the KR200, and calling it a car was generous. It was more like a rolling experiment in minimalism. At just 9 feet long, 4 feet wide, and barely 4 feet tall, the KR200 looked like a toy, but it was dead serious about mobility. It weighed just over 500 pounds, making it one of the lightest vehicles on the road. And yet, it had something no scooter ever did: a full bubble canopy and room for 2 passengers, but only if they sat single file, like in a fighter jet. Inside, it was cramped, strange, and unforgettable. Instead of a steering wheel, there were handlebars. The gearshift looked like something pulled off a motorcycle. And yet, despite its ridiculous proportions, the KR200 had a kind of futuristic charm. It was cheap, it was tiny, and it could squeeze through traffic and park in spaces no normal car could ever dream of. And under its tiny shell, things got even weirder. Underneath the KR200's bubble canopy beat the heart of a motorcycle. It was powered by a 191 cubic centimeters single-cylinder, 2-stroke engine made by Fichtel and Sachs. An engine so small, it looked like it belonged on a lawnmower. But don't be fooled. That little motor churned out 10.2 horsepower at 5,200 RPM, enough to push the Microcar to a surprisingly zippy 56 miles per hour. That's faster than some modern golf cart, and in a vehicle this tiny, it felt like takeoff speed. But the real twist? It didn't have a reverse gear. Instead, the engine could actually run backwards, literally rotating in the opposite direction to reverse the entire car. You just turn off the engine, hit a special starter switch, and the whole system would fire up in reverse. No gear change, no complicated mechanics, just pure, simple brilliance. And the fuel economy? Unbelievable. 87 miles per gallon. A full tank held only 3.4 gallons, but that tiny reservoir could carry you nearly 300 miles. It was one of the most efficient gas-powered vehicles ever made. But inside that futuristic cock, things got even stranger. Climbing into a KR200 felt less like getting into a car and more like boarding a fighter jet. Instead of traditional doors, it had a clear acrylic canopy that swung open to the side, just like a warplane cockpit. Visibility was stunning, offering a full panoramic view of the world around you. But ventilation? Practically non-existent. On hot summer days, the cabin could turn into a greenhouse, cooking the driver in what felt like a rolling fishbowl. Inside, the tandem seating meant your passenger sat directly behind you. No side-by-side comfort here. It was cozy, maybe too cozy. And the steering? Handlebars instead of a wheel, giving it a weirdly motorcycle-like feel that took getting used to. You didn't just drive the KR200, you piloted it. Despite all of this, the ride was surprisingly smooth. It used rubber torsion suspension on all 3 wheels and had hydraulic drum brakes that could stop it quickly thanks to its feather-light body. Every drive felt like a strange mix of airplane, motorcycle, and go-kart, and that's exactly what made it unforgettable. But Messerschmitt wasn't done yet. The next version pushed things even further. As demand grew, Messerschmitt didn't just sit back and ride the success of the KR200. They doubled down. Soon, new versions rolled out, including the KR201 convertible, a roadster model, and even competition editions designed to break records. And break records they did. One heavily modified KR blasted through Europe's endurance circuits, setting long-distance speed records that left skeptics speechless. It may have looked like a cartoon car, but it had real engineering teeth. These variants were more than cosmetic. Some boasted tuned engines, lighter bodies, assemblies, and aerodynamic tweaks that pushed performance to the edge. For a car that started as a mobility aid for injured veterans, the KR200 had become a legitimate motorsport oddity. But the golden age couldn't last forever, because what stopped the KR200 wasn't failure, it was progress. By the early 1960s, the world was changing fast. Economies were booming, roads were improving, and full-sized cars were no longer out of reach for the average family. The very thing that made the KR200 a hit, its size and simplicity, now made it feel outdated. People didn't want cramped cabins and motorcycle engines anymore. They wanted space, comfort, and horsepower. Messerschmitt saw the writing on the wall. In 1964, after nearly a decade of quirky innovation, they ended production. Around 40,000 units had been built, but the microcar moment had passed. The KR200 faded from the roads, but not from memory, because even in death the KR200 refused to be forgotten, and decades later collectors would prove just how much this tiny titan was still worth. Today, the KR200 has become a cult classic. What was once seen as a bizarre oddity is now celebrated as a brilliant piece of engineering history. Pristine examples regularly fetch over $50,000 at auction, with some models even more valuable if they're rare variants or in showroom condition. Museums across Europe and North America proudly display them, not as gimmicks, but as symbols of post-war ingenuity. Collectors don't just buy them, they obsess over them. Every detail, from the bubble canopy to the reverse start engine, is a conversation piece. And the best part? They still run. Many KR200s on the road today remain surprisingly reliable, often restored by enthusiasts who see them not just as cars, but as time capsules. In a world now filled with electric SUVs and soulless self-driving tech, the KR200 reminds us of a time when design was daring, engineering was personal, and every drive felt like an adventure. But the real legacy of the KR200 isn't in its horsepower, it's in its heart. The Messerschmitt KR200 wasn't just a car, it was a statement. A post-war phoenix built from the ashes of aviation, daring to rewrite the rules of personal transportation. It looked ridiculous, drove unlike anything else, and made no apologies for its strangeness. But in its tiny frame lived the same innovation and resilience that rebuilt Europe after the war. It proved that you didn't need size to make an impact. That function could be beautiful. That even the weirdest ideas, when backed by vision, can change history. Today, the KR200 is more than a microcar. It's a reminder of a time when the world refused to slow down, even in its smallest machines. So next time you see one of these bubble top wonders rolling by, don't laugh. You're looking at one of the boldest cars ever made.